Hey there, my name is Alex, I am the Silver Mont, and this is my review of Hitman 3, played on PC via the Epic Games Store. Disclaimer, this is a sponsored video. Square Enix provided me with a review copy of Hitman 3 at launch. I am not being paid or otherwise compensated for the coverage. As for some quick history, I've never played through any of the Hitman games, outside of playing one of the older ones for a brief time many years ago. I was aware of the franchise, but I'd never developed an interest in it. I have seen some of the movies though. That out of the way though, let's get into it. Hitman 3 is the end of a trilogy of recent Hitman games, I believe starting in 2016, and it is possible to play all of the levels from Hitman 1 and 2 in this game, which is a good feature, especially if you're, well, like me and you haven't played any of the others. Though apparently some players are having issues with importing their sort of levels from the first two games. On the topic of the Epic Games Store and the always online aspects of the game, they caused me no problems, but I know they'll be contentious for some. Personally, whilst I don't really enjoy needing a bunch of different launchers, I don't have any significant issues with the Epic launcher, outside of it sometimes taking a long time to install games. I know it's missing some features, but I'll be honest, I don't use launchers for much more than launching games. But I know it is frustrating for some people to have a franchise split over different storefronts, such as owning 1 and 2 on Steam and 3 on the Epic Games Store. As for the always online, I had a few moments in the game where it told me it was reconnecting to servers momentarily, but that was the most I noticed it. From what I understand, it is possible to play the game offline, but your progress and scores and all that won't work. As for the actual game, Hitman's basic gameplay loop is as follows. You're put into a map of relatively small size but dense detail. Within this map you are given one or more targets to deal with. That's the basic gist of it. There are several maps and locations. On the surface it sounds extremely simple because it is. If you were just playing the story, you could blow through Hitman in a few hours. The replay value comes from playing these maps again in different ways to unlock more items, to see mission stories, and increase your score on that sandbox. Your assassination methods are extremely varied and can be creative. Sure, you could run up to a guy and bop him on the head with a hammer. Or you could check his schedule, wait for him to play some golf, and then replace one of the golf balls with an exploding one. Each of these sandbox maps are absolutely packed with details and creative ways to interact with them. Sinks can be overflowed, fuse boxes can be sabotaged, electrical outlets tampered with, drinks poisoned, doors unlocked with lockpicks or keys or violently with a crowbar. Ledges and pipes can be climbed, windows vaulted through, and so on. There is a lot of replay value and different ways to play through missions. And there's a surprising number of, can I do this? I can moments, which I enjoyed. There is a story, although it wasn't particularly engaging to me, jumping in at the third game as I was, but the presentation is nice and 47's distinctive voice always seems to deliver a nice performance. The game isn't heavy on story, but it is there. Outside of the story, you can replay missions and take on bonus challenges. If you've imported the levels from the first two games, you can of course play through those as well. Or in my case, have a complete collection in one game that sits around 50 to 60 gigabytes. I was impressed with that as well as the general level of detail in the game. Whilst you can tell this isn't, say, Red Dead Redemption 2 with 8 years of development time and a budget that is comical amounts of dollars, you know, when you have things like the NPCs who walk up to doors and the doors just magically open. There are things like that where, yes, you can tell this isn't a super high budget game, but there is a lot of detail put into the game, down to things like the mirrors having reflections, cloth physics on clothes and all that, which ripple convincingly, and very striking lighting. All the footage in this review is played on mostly maxed out settings, targeting 60 FPS at 1440p. I don't have a card that supports RTX, so there's no ray tracing here, but the game still looked great with reflections and lighting to me. It ran really well too. I had no crashes or performance issues. The game loads incredibly quickly, even though I didn't install it on my SSD, so if I had it on my SSD it would be probably almost instantaneous. I capped the frame rate at 60, but if the benchmarks are anything to go by, I could have easily played it at 1440p and 140 FPS. This is just my experience, of course, but the game feels very well optimized for me. Nice change of pace from certain other games. I was very impressed with the game's graphics, but if I had something to complain about, it would be how the physics for ragdolls and the like seem outdated. They seem like, 2007 era ragdolls. Whilst the textures, lighting, and models are all nice, you make an enemy fall over or whatever and they crumple in a very comical way, which on the one hand is nice because it's funny, on the other hand, I would like to see that improved considering the nature of the game, making these sort of physics often front and center, such as it were. I played the game using an Xbone pad and the controls were fine. Aiming feels a little loose, but shooting is not a very large part of the game, frankly. Outside of the final mission, I think I fired my gun twice for targets that I could not find a way to reasonably isolate. Or in one case, I missed dropping a bag of bricks on the guy's head, so I pulled out a pistol and just unloaded on him. So can I suggest the game? If you're a Hitman fan, you doubtless have either already played the game or you know a lot more about it than I could explain to you. But if you're a newcomer, someone like me who's perhaps knows of the franchise but never really got into it, well yeah, this is a good time to hop in. If you're able to grab all 3 games in one bundle, with having the maps and everything from the first 2 games in this third one, I think that's good. Keep in mind that if you just want to play through the maps once, you're not like to get your money's worth paying full price. This is one of those games where the bulk of the content comes from replaying it in different ways. That's where the real meat is, whether you're doing it for your own enjoyment or competing on the leaderboards. That said, from what I can gather, the leaderboards mostly seem to come down to who can find an insane way to beat the mission in 20 seconds. My amateur opinion is that these leaderboards seem weighted only to time, which should play a factor but perhaps not be the deciding one. All in all, I think this is a very well developed and polished game, and it was a very nice video game in that the gameplay was always front and center. There are some cutscenes, there are some story segments, but all of that is in favour of the gameplay, not the other way around. I respect that. I get frustrated with games that bend the gameplay around the story and have you slog through overly tedious sections that are unskippable because of it. So Hitman 3 gets a thumbs up from me. I think they should release a demo consisting of one of the levels if they haven't, as that would really help sell the experience in my opinion. Demos in general are very useful, I think, and Hitman 3 is a game perfectly suited for a demo. But check it out. If you think you would only play through it once, then maybe wait for a sale. If you are the sort of person who will replay games and likes going through and exploring different avenues and all that, then I think it's worth the full price, for sure. So certainly check it out. But thanks once again to Square Enix for providing me with the code. It was a very pleasant surprise, this game, I must say. And thank you for watching, and catch you next time.